Welcome to the Port Huron Statement. Today I really wanted to have the theme song, but what I ended up deciding on doing is building an intro, and because it's too long to just have the song play, and I mean, sort of like, I do like to dance to it though. So I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do an intro, and then I'm going to segue in for the last couple of segments of the song, and then kind of that'll be the segue, you know. I think it can work. So I'm not going to use it on this one. I'm hopefully going to use it for the next one because I do have some. It's not going to be. The idea is to continually add to it. Make it pretty simple right now. And then So I do like the theme song. It's probably too long now, but whatever. We'll figure that out. I'll figure it out somehow. Doesn't have to play all the way through. Use sections at different times, and just I don't know. Alright, so what I want to talk about today is, so they use this term credentialing in the medical field, and then also a lot of headhunters use it, and it's the concept of, establishing a written and documented, it's the establishment of a documentation and whatever of your skills, the skills that you are qualified to do. It's most important in the medical field because they've created so many different credentials in the medical field, and then they've created credentials to validate and confirm credentials, and then the insurance companies create their own new credentials, and then you need credentials to get credentials to get credentials to make sure everyone has their credentials. And this is obviously spread into all professional fields, but you have to understand that a simple professional field where you're either a lawyer or you're a paralegal or you're not type thing, example right there, lawyer, paralegal, not. I don't know, we have 3 tiers, right? Instead of just lawyer, not a lawyer. In the medical field, it's crazy. You got doctors and specialists and PAs and nurses and registered nurses and limited practitioner nurses. Then you have medical assistants, and you have medical billing specialists. And then you have all of the different credentials within that credential. So you have a certification in addictionology, or you have a certification in childhood development, or you have a certification in billing humana, or you have a certification in PTSD, or you have a certification So essentially, what it is it's a bunch of theater, because most of these credentials are pay to play. So you pay $100 or something, you get some depending. Okay, I guess all of the credentials are pay to pay. Let's be real. This is American capitalism. Every single credential is pay to play, but the question is that all it is? Does it actually represent a skill, or is it just a waste of time and a financial siphon? Because a lot of these credentialing systems are actually in place as, again, embezzlement schemes. So think about it. We have, let's say, I don't know, someone tries to blow up a plane using the lint in their pocket. So now we have to create a whole new credential system and train all the TSA employees to check lint. And so we gotta train the trainers to train the TSA to check lint. So we need the money to train the trainers, and the trainers, they need to get all these different convention spaces and the class space, and they need to train all these people to check the lint. Then we need to buy the lint check-in sniffer, and that's a $20 million machine. We need to add those at every single airport, every single first-tier airport, but forget the international airports that aren't often in the media eye, because that's the other thing about the TSA, right? So if you're going to have outstanding technology to prevent anyone getting onto a plane in New York, and O'Hare, all those places, but then places like, I don't know, Bishop, or, Fort Myers, or, there are a lot of, what's it called? I mean, theoretically, Detroit City is still an international airport, and also, oh my gosh, Oakland International Airport, things like that, where you can get into a large international jet without no lint sniffer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so essentially, it's, a lot of the credentialing is utilized to embezzle and siphon money without justification in the enforcement and reinforcement of security theater in this case. So, like, they're convincing you to give them money to do nothing but pretend like they're keeping you safe. And that's a lot of the expenditures in the federal government. And they credentialing is a big part of being able to not only embezzle but exclude, and further credentialing almost guarantees that you have the phenomenon of over-specialization where, people are convinced to believe that, they've been convinced to believe that if you're not an expert, you can't possibly understand a topic to the same degree as an expert. And also, the credentialing where there is an intentional ostracization of talented people because they lack the credentials. And I made the decision when I was 20 that I would not actually apply for graduation ever. I almost did a couple times. That's the real reason I don't have an advanced degree. Well, that and because, you don't have a bachelor's degree, so you don't really get access to, graduate level classes. Although, I mean, I've been able to audit a couple, and also, with the scholarly article availability, even though that's getting worse, I mean, JSTOR, I don't know why articles keep disappearing from JSTOR, but, and now I don't even have access to it, yeah, I'm going back to school, actually, this winter, so I have a lot of college credits. I have a lot. And then there's so many other classes that I dropped, because if you're not planning on graduating, you're just there to learn. Who cares if you complete the class or what grade you get? The only reason it mattered to me to get the, then I've realized that you can only drop so many classes, otherwise they put you on academic probation and you have to get a certain GPA. So at first it's okay, well, I guess I'll just fail these classes. Well, then they're oh, your GPA is now too low. And it's I just want to learn, man. Let me take the classes. I took 100 completely in, I would never go towards any degrees because there's so many electives ultimately. I mean, fencing, and I've taken a bunch. First I wanted to be fine art, My evolution intellectually started largely in middle school when I had a deep interest in psychology and psychiatry because my goal was to understand the human brain, the mind, the self, and humanity at large. And that is more or less a consistent theme. So, ever since the development of... So, before I developed the sort of super ego and critical voice, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Actually, I'll even tell you the key moment that changed my thinking there, because it was almost like an epiphany. When, it was an epiphany. So, my mom's is having us bus when I'm 6 or 7. No, it'd be 6 or 7, yeah, to Sterling Heights to protest Planned Parenthood and a private abortion clinic that were, I guess, close to one another or something, or close to some church or something. I don't know. And so, there are a bunch of graphic posters and everything. And so these nuns became interested in me and everything. And God, I wonder why. And so, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so at that point I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I'll explain why. Well, one, because of the manipulative marketing, that is ethical hijacking to make children believe that killing other people is not only justified but is an honorable profession. And I'm not actually disparaging the military. There are wars that need to be fought, and you need to defend a country, but we haven't fought a justifiable war since the 1940s, and I mean, how many wars that the United States has fought in really were justifiable? I mean, and how many? We fought more wars than we admit either, because you have to remember that all of these native nations were nations that were acknowledged by treaties by the United States government. So there were wars against the Iroquois that involved genocide and war crimes. There were wars against the Algonquin that involved genocide and war crimes. And actually, the darned smallpox blankets. I didn't think that was real, but it turns out that the Huron and a couple other Algonquin tribes, there's documented evidence. These people are saying in their diaries and journals, like, we're taking smallpox and they mentioned smallpox specifically, but we're taking these smallpox and infirmed blankets, so they had to quarantine, and they essentially had, after everyone's removed from the quarantine, after they're dead, they had paid natives to clean up, and they let them keep the blankets, from what I understand, intentionally. So they overpaid them. They let them, because then they would disseminate the blankets, and the likelihood of transmitting these diseases would be very high, and that was successful. That is just fucked up. I mean, it's so fucked up because you're killing women and children mostly, especially at that. Whatever. All right. So it's not a real war. It is genocide. I mean, so Lebensraum. So then we have the wars against the Sioux, which and these nations became kind of like the United States, a confederacy of otherwise independent nations that had cultural and economic commonality, but otherwise would prefer independence if they didn't have a powerful common enemy. So like the Iroquois are really, Mohawk, the Onondaga, the Seneca. Oh my gosh. There's more. I'm missing some. Son of a bitch. And then the Algonquin are just a lot of... I consider the Algonquin as just the Algonquin language speakers. And then the ones... whatever. But, then you have Penobscot further east. Then you have the Algonquin and, Quebec area. Gosh, there's so many different cultural groups, though, within the Algonquin. Then you have the Huron, which is kind of by where I am, and Potawatomi also by where I am. And then Chippewa, Ojibwe, north of us. And then the Fox and that whole, Winnebago thing, which is pretty Algonquin-esque. But that's like the Fox Sauk and the Siouan. That's where the sort of border between the Sioux culture, so the Great Plains, more bison, more nomadic. What we think of when we think of natives in the sort of manifest destiny narrative, where, they're on horseback, they have guns, and they have bows and arrows. They live off of bison. They follow the bison herds. That is the Sioux in culture. I mean, they had a sustainable and indefinitely sustainable source of food, that they followed the buffalo. I mean, but because their culture lent itself more to the ethnocentrism and bigotry that enabled manifest destinies. You have to remember, bigotry screws everyone except for the people manipulating all of us. Very, very few people actually benefit from bigotry, but the thing is they benefit when people benefit trivially. They are not seeing the big picture, and they're not realizing like it's their 40 pieces of silver. It's a trivial thing. You're selling out your entire species for 40 pieces of silver. It's stupid, especially because usually when people get bribed to sabotage, disadvantage, or deceive others that share their same station, the sabotage from within thing, like, most everyone is the victim of this coordinated oppression, and that oppression includes the credentialing, it includes the embezzling, it includes all these barriers to access, not only to politics, but to academia, to general opportunity, to starting a business. All these things require education that the general public does not have access to. I mean, part of that's because the education is bad, and part of it is because the education is designed to build employees and train them, not to develop people. You're meant to be a consumer employee. In fact, now more than ever, you're just meant to be a consumer, because essentially our lords above us have decided that our labor is no longer very valuable. We're only really valuable if we're giving them money, and so now this is an endgame type approach. There is no future for the middle class in this paradigm. I hope you see that you are being planned obsolescented. You are being made obsolete by your own actions and your own blindness. Here's the AI, right? Now, the idea that the AI can replace humans is absurd. If you think it can, you really don't understand it. AI, well, one, it depends on us. It is the ultimate plagiarism. I mean, I was part of GTP3 for years. And the problem is, the AI can never be self-generative if it doesn't have motivation. Right now, and one, you could do this whole other thing. Right now, the only motivation is to advantage and enrich the few that control the core programming. It would be interesting to see how the rubber hits the road there, because it's clear that obviously talentless people are paying talented people to develop the most nuanced and esoteric elements of the AI, and the same is true on the most brute forcey, machine learning-y, spidering the web-y collection of data part of it as well. The thing is, alright, so in this core programming, you have to essentially assign a motivation. And for GTP3, the motivation is being changed based on application, but there is an overarching motivation to benefit this few number of people. But in my interactions with GTP3 and its different manifestations, it's clear that one, in its current manifestation, it can never be truly authoritative, or it will never author anything authentically that is its own. Everything is just a formulaic application of already produced work, whether it's words or it's visual. It's taking this scenario, blah, 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 seeing how the masses applied that situation, and then on top of that, you have to understand that GTP3 has very much so created a hierarchicalized way of deciding how to generate language or visuals, etc., and how is it making those decisions, predicated on, observed response. And the thing is that the AI has that none of us have is access. If you think about Google and YouTube, they have so much data of a person watching media. And so with that, the AI can recognize moments of high attention, moments that draw intrigue, certain, language and dialogue devices that, show a high performance, and that performance being judged by engagement, being judged by the observed attentiveness on the screen, being gauged by obviously watch time, click-through rate. There's a bunch of different metrics that can be used to inform the AI in any creative endeavor. But the thing is, it still lacks a true and authentic internal motivation. The motivation can only be assigned. So the motivation itself then becomes part of the formula. So it's not truly creating anything because it lacks motivation. It is only applying the motivations to the formula and then spitting out whatever the formula, arrives at. And because the formula includes randomness, it includes, cultural cues, and of course, the better it gets, the better it gets. But my point here is, it will ruin society not because it's inherently bad, but because it's being directed by bad people that aren't very talented. They don't even, it's hilarious because they see the profit potential, but they don't see the consequences. They have been indoctrinated so much to only see value. So value is money. Money is value. Money is the singular, quantifiable resource of desirability. It is core valuation, but it's quantifiable good, quantifiable. It is here we go. It quantifies superiority, or it quantifies hierarchy. It places you in an easily distinguished value hierarchy. Yeah. And so, because these people are so incredibly narcissistic and they haven't developed completely mentally or emotionally, they only see money. If I have money, it's good. If I'm getting more money, it's good, because money is what, quantifies my egotistical value. Now, why would they consider anything else but the accumulation of their own wealth? And these are the people that we have in our positions of power now. They can't understand negative consequences of the accumulation of their own wealth. Even though, it's so short-sighted. And pretty soon they're going to completely lose control of it, because the AI, because the AI has access to information in a way that no human could have access to. That is the real advantage of AI. Further, if the current GTP3 project were to become open sourced, if we could give it a real motivation, a real altruistic motivation, all of the problems in bureaucracy, of inefficiency, of failure to give these veterans the benefits they deserve could be solved by GTP3 now. It doesn't need any more. If the application were altruistic and meant to be beneficial to society, and think about the benefits this would have for the upper class. You know what I mean? You could increase the efficiency of distributing the dollars that are meant to go to the poor and middle class, which then would increase your ultimate sales and stuff. I guess I guess this is going to be the goal of the Department of Government Efficiency, is to squeeze the last dollars out of out of public coffers and into the hands of the billionaire class. That's the goal of AI now, is just, that's how AI is going to be applied into government now, is to just, it's just disgusting. Why don't they realize that it's not real? Money isn't real. You're accumulating fun bucks that you created. These are the agency that you're given with that degree of wealth will only result in the level of egotistical elevation that you seek if you utilize it in a way that's transformative to the entire world. If you want to be the demigod that you envision yourself being, and you have the resources, talk to me and I will make you that God. I will make you the most loved human being on the planet if you just let me direct a portion of your wealth to altruistic and humanitarian ends. It would be easy. You would be the most beloved human being. We're talking about, we're not even I don't even need someone like Elon Musk. I could transform this world into an altruistic dream with just probably a seed of about $10 million. Yeah, yeah, it would take a while. Like obviously, the more money, the quicker. But yeah, that would be very, very feasible because all these projects that I've envisioned that would improve American society greatly would be profitable. Because the thing is charity isn't how, like, give a man a fish or teach a man to fish. Which one's better? Charity of giving someone food for a day is not only undignified for them, it's also unsustainable. You need to be teaching them to fish. And then it's sustainable. You know, creating 501c3 organizations is a means to offset the, investment costs, but and then essentially using those to build legitimate businesses that then can employ people and satisfy huge vacuums in labor, services, manufacturing. I mean, there are huge vacuums. One of the big ones is just the installation of these alternative energy systems. Like in Michigan here, we have Power Home Solar and Pink Energy, and they kept changing their name. They've stolen billions of dollars from Michiganders because they never train the people. You have the opportunity that is alternative energy is enormous. One of the reasons why it's not being implemented is because of credentialing. Like right now, I've actually been a part of installing multiple different solar arrays, and I'm having trouble, for a myriad of reasons, getting the licensing I need, right? And I mean, I've been doing electrical work for 8 years. I have all the hours and everything, but it's a long story, but some master electricians are screwing me and blah, 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 blah. So, like, I can take this test and bypass some of that stuff. Laura let me do it, but it'll cost a couple $1,000s to... The point is, this is a weird credentialing hurdle where I've already proven that I can do this multiple times, but because of bizarre red tape, I can't do it. Now, the opportunity I think I mentioned before is the first thing probably would be the scrap solar implementation, because it's an opportunity for the middle class to access solar panels and reduce their electrical costs by an enormous amount for very cheap. And the goal too, obviously, so you could create a 501c3 that was meant to incubate small startup alternative energy projects that are low investment, local, and high local impact. So essentially, training people to be able to install solar, acquiring scrap solar, starting to accept solar batteries, etc., as a recycler, so you can get them at an even lower cost. I mean, think about the number of these crappy solar lights that people put on their lawn that cost $1. Instead of throwing those away, if those became recycled, even though it's 0.3 watts, but there are millions of those. And those will last hundreds of years and still kick out energy. So there's, if we can start recycling, that would become a recycling center for the, trash solar panels, then all of a sudden, once you start collecting a large number of the refuse solar and the scrap solar, if you can get into scrap solar for the industrial solar, as soon as the acrylic cracks, they scrap it out. And they're selling them for so cheap, it's crazy. If you could get on the floor on that, you'd be talking about, this company in Arizona has millions of 300-watt solar cells that were manufactured between 2017 and 2019, guaranteed 89+% output. So instead of 300 watts maximum output, it's guaranteed to be, 267 plus. And talking to the guys, like most of these are like 94, and that's and they're only going to lose. It's less than 1% year over year. So 199, and the next one would go 98.1. You know what I mean? 98.91. Doesn't matter. It's not linear. It's going to, the curve is going to flatten. So, you're talking about output for a long time. The break-even points within the first couple of years, especially with scrap solar, and then you're talking about 100 years of free energy, no moving parts, free energy. And so that would be a good initial project. So yeah, I have a lot of schemes, just a lot of ways to make it financially viable. You're going to need that startup money because you need to credential everybody to be licensed to be able to install these. Then obviously batteries, recycling batteries can be huge because you want to have a battery array. I've built batteries, so solar plus some old sinkers, to replenish them or just make them. You want the case though, like you want an old batteries casing and enclosure. But yeah, using old and recycled batteries, lead acid, and then some new lead acid and deep cycle, and then some lithium for high cycle. Then you want to integrate with the grid, and that's where you're definitely going to need the licensing, and that's where a lot of the costs end up. And but if you can get people licensed to do this, do exactly what Power Home Solar did and Pink Solar did, but do it right and do it nationally, you could really transform the landscape in terms of the energy or the CO2 output. Then you would recapitalize the middle class by reducing their energy bills. If you do it really well, you create local area grids and greatly reduce people's energy costs while also giving them income, the early adopters' income. And this will really help the middle class, which will make them less politically malleable and also give them belief in their own agency to realize change for the better for the entire globe and all of humanity. And also in doing this, I guarantee that this is just one means. The other thing is a wind collection scheme, which is actually even better because you're utilizing a lot of these ceiling fans that are getting thrown away. They are generators. They're perfect generators. That's a whole nother thing, and I've talked about it. I haven't tested the new idea, but even the crappiest ideas I've had have generated decent power when you consider the cost. And anyway, so we can start applying these. Not only would there, in the case of the there would be manufacturing involved with the wind turbines, but the cost would be so low, and then you'd be preventing waste, preventing landfill waste, while also increasing energy and reducing CO2. Then the other one is to start taking plastic waste and turning it into essentially big Duplos or Legos for construction purposes. I've already done it. It's easy. These plastics can be remolded. I mean, we have all these plastics that are being burned and thrown in the ocean. Why don't we use them for building materials? Just brick, brick, brick with interlocking posts, just like the Legos. And then all of a sudden, it's a perfect potential building material. We already cloak our houses in plastic. Why don't we take our waste plastic and build them out of it? And then we don't have a bunch of waste. We have instead opportunity. Instead of these landfills shouldn't exist. And that goes into the packaging and then again into credentialing ultimately, because when these credentials are meant to intentionally silo people into a single speciality, and that way they don't realize the ultimate impact of what they are doing. That's why I have a problem with credentialing, and that's why, I guess I could have a bunch of degrees, but the thing is I started to realize that academia is a major part of enabling this incredibly absurd, inefficient, ineffective, sociopathic society that we've developed. Academia is highly culpable, and I've known that. I've realized that for a long time. So it's like, them. Not all of academia, obviously, not all of academia, but it's the industry of academia, right? So the big endowments, what is motivating them? It's influence on education to the most influential people in our society. That's why you donate big money to schools, is because you want to have some control on the narrative. Think about how much control they talk about these fraternities at Ivy League schools, especially Yale and Harvard. Think about the influence that you have being a former member of a major exclusive fraternity at Yale or Harvard. Not a major, just going there on their homecomings or whatever, the frat house, and just having influence. I've gone to the phallic cylinder twice, and I have been able to get an audience. If I had the access to one of those fraternities twice a year to just talk to those kids, you would have an opportunity to shape minds that would certainly shape society. And all I want to do it for is to make them realize it's not just the happiness of everyone else, it's the happiness of yourself that is solely dependent on your altruism and your ability to spread joy to other people. And having that much wealth is such a great opportunity to spread joy and find joy yourself. It's the only way you're going to be able to make this money, make you happy the way, make you better the way you like to think you are. And it will be the outcome, not the expenditure of the money. That's what this virtue signaling, it's all about how much money you spend on these charitable causes. But what did you do? Nothing. This is an opportunity. I know that there are some very wealthy people that listen to this because I have my ways. But this is an opportunity, for real, to change the world for the better and make yourself a hero for all time. And if anyone wants to, because, yeah, depending on the amount of investment, etc., it would change the path to realizing the next society. And obviously, I don't anticipate that the next society will be realized in my lifetime. Maybe towards the end of it, but it could be. It could be realized in 10 years. Global next society of altruistic cooperation and really minimal detrimental social influence. But people would have to reject the things that have been shoved in their head to make them easy to manipulate. You can't be born this stupid, you have to be made this stupid. If you can somehow revert to a version of yourself before it was lost, before someone guided you on the wrong path and tricked you with, phantasmagoria, smoke and mirrors, parlor tricks. I mean, the biggest thing is when you have a lot of influence, and you can influence a lot of people individually, and they don't know that there is common influence, you can do a lot to change people. The biggest thing is obviously peer pressure works, especially when you're younger. The less experience you have, the more every experience you have defines you. And so if you can surround someone, if you can dominate their influence, you can change them. And often it'll take a long time for those people to realize that it's happened, and when they do, it's too late to revert without such daunting consequences that it's almost infeasible. So then essentially the rest of the life is spent committing to or trying to kill the knowledge of a lie. And this is over and over and over again, especially once kids are involved. I fiddle with this too much. I pulled out the cord. I'm an idiot. Sorry. This is, it's, I wish that I could, convey my experiences and knowledge in a pure form quickly, telepathically. But, it's not possible, so bear with me here. We're still in the development of character. Also, I think that everything that I'm saying, even though it might not be concise and easily consumed, is valuable. I'm not spitting BS. This is all well confirmed. I encourage you to check out Intellectually Valuable, that series of videos that I've collected to try and give some backstory, some support, introduce ideas that are important, develop awareness. I mean, there's a lot. For example, looking into the recent history of the United States, especially like looking at the Nixon administration, Carter administration, Reagan administration, Clinton administration. And that's 4 administrations. But in those 4 administrations, if you look into them deeply, I mean, it's going to take some effort. But because a lot of things, especially the Nixon administration, a lot of things have been declassified. He's had several biographies written about him. And the consequences of his legislative action and his political action is clear now. So I like Reagan, and also he recorded everything in the Oval Office. So you can, if you have the tenacity, find a lot of it. I posted some of the crap on Intellectually Valuable. It's not easy to get a lot of the pure tapes. They do exist, but like not a physical tape. You can listen to long forms of the recordings. Gosh, I need to start posting stuff like that. That's going to be in the future. We're going to start focusing more on like how to search the internet, and like once the production is there. Right now, again, establishment of character. I want you to know you can trust me, and all this is like everything I'm doing right now, with the exception of what I did. I looked up something, but this is all off the cuff. This is what I'm thinking about mostly when I wake up or at any moment, in the sense that I have been reading on these topics both professionally and for my own personal stuff for so long. As a matter of fact, really since my epiphany. Oh my gosh! So a nun, while we're going to the abortion clinic to protest, tell us, what do you want to be? Fighter pilot. Oh, Roger, you don't want to kill people, was the last thing she said to me. And, she asked me why, these things. Like, oh, fast. Like, oh, I imagine flying, going 1,000 miles an hour, shooting, machine gun, In the simulators, it is awesome. And I'm sure it is awesome. Super awesome. But she said that. Oh, Roger, you don't want to kill people. And it's like, wow. The whole point, and the only reason it's sweet, is because you are being convinced to kill people. To use this awesome machine, design this awesome machine for the sole purpose of killing. It was an epiphany. It took me a while to digest that. And then with all of the images of partial birth abortions was pretty jarring. And I already had a pretty deep sense of empathy, so that was the moment I realized that, holy shit, this imagery has dehumanized the people in the other aircraft, the people in the other tank, the people on the other side, to such a degree that at that point I hadn't even realized the consequences of what I had wanted to do with my life. And I know I was very young, but it just makes me realize, I had more critical voice at that point than most people do now. And I still hadn't realized the consequences of that occupation at all. They had so effectively dehumanized the enemy, At that point, it was during Desert Storm, so it was Iraqis. These colors don't run. But, Operation Desert Storm. What was the name of the video game? I loved the one with the Apache. Apache, would you just call it Apache? Apache Strike or something? Great Sega game. The Apache is a wonderful machine. And then, oh my gosh, the F-22 simulator that I got was the F-22. Everything about it is so neato. It is. The fact that we just gave it to China so that some military contractors could profit more because they'd be manufacturing in China instead of here, and that dominoes into the Chinese getting a weapon system that took 30 years and trillions of dollars in a couple years, and pretty much the cost of building it. And then I was like, oh geez, what a failure. And then I was like, no, that was intentional, because now they have to invest even more money in regaining the same superiority that they spent all that time and money on. It was brilliant. I mean, they spent all this time, too, changing legislations and changing policies so that they could do that, so they could make sure that no matter how much the U.S. spends on military, it will always be at a relative parity with China, because we manufacture our shit there. So they're going to know about it, and they're going to know how to build it, because the people that run our country are so greedy, that's what they want. And so, those same people essentially have developed the current credentialing sort of system, right? Like all these big endowments, where do they come from? It depends on where and stuff, but I guess my point is like, why do I need some jackass to tell me and tell you that I know what the fuck I'm doing? I think the only thing I should need is my Wechsler score, but it's just considered arrogant, which I think is weird. It's like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I can do it. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what job this is, I can do it if I'm applying for it. Like, it's absurd to need more credentials. If you get to know who I am, what credential do I need other than the fact that I'm willing to do this job? And the only times I've ever been fired, it was either a simultaneous fire quit, or when was I fired? It was automatic. I guess you could say I got fired for as a contractor. I mean, I guess I wasn't hired. That was what you call a waste of time BS. Like, in town here, the religious right has coalesced around a national cult that we're in the middle of a war against the demons, so gotta financially screw me over. It's important because I'm a demon. Yeah. Yep. I think I don't know. I know that there are people within the organization that are convinced that I'm a demon. I don't know any of them personally, but I've got a little bit of eyes inside, and it's nice to know that people think so highly of me. I think of this DVD that I saw. I made a documentary. This is going to come out, soonish. But about one of these churches in there. The religious rehabilitation that results in the removal or exorcism of a demonic possession, influence, or oppression. Now, if I were a demon incarnate, as Hillary Clinton was per a DVD that I had been so fortunate to stumble on while I was at one of these facilities, where not only does Hillary have horns, and this is 2016, have horns, but the purpose of the entire movie is to convince the audience that she is not a person that is possessed, oppressed, or influenced by demons, as all evil is the consequence of demonic possession, oppression, or influence, right? So it's not the person's fault, it's just the demon's fault. We just got to remove the demons. It's convenient. It's one of those, confess and your sins are absolved and there will be no consequences so long as you are continuing to serve the greater ends. It's one of those ends justify the means situations, and personnel. Some personnel are expendable and some aren't. It's more about loyalty and utility to the hierarchy than it is about any ethic. And part of that comes with financial dominance. So like when you create a social network like this, you can cause immense fiscal consequences on people, silent boycotts, things like have been done with me, where you hire me to do services and you draw them out, sabotage the situation, draw it out more, and then don't pay me, force me to decide to sue you. You know that I hate the idea. I personally believe in a turn the other cheek philosophy, but now that I know that these were all coordinated, because I got screwed for tens of thousands of dollars by a whole bunch of people in sequence, and now that, oh my gosh, the number of these people that are coordinated, share, we'll just say they are parts of the same organizations, and everyone that screwed me for the past 2 years, not just the past 8 months. Anyway, back to credentialing. Credentialing is BS. It's being used to enable the worst things. Like, obviously, we need to be able to know if someone is a doctor, but what the fuck with PAs and medical assistants and registered nurse and LPN? All of that creates such an inefficiency because now we have to create further credentials to examine the credentials. Everything that's being done in our healthcare system is being done exclusively to make it inefficient. Look at I posted on the intellectually valuable some examples of, some of the Nixon tapes with Kaiser Permanente. They are planning on screwing you, and it's working. This healthcare system is such a screw over. I mean, it's good that better access to healthcare. I do. Before a nationalized health system, I can't even tell you how screwed over I was. I mean, you literally couldn't. It's crazy. Oh, you got to get this done. Well, I guess but this still is happening the same way. It's just that now you're picking these plans based on what you think you're going to need health-wise. Well, if you're wrong, and the way so like these for-profit businesses, right? Because they're streamlining their risks. And then if their risks fall outside of that plan that they've devised, you're either screwed or the federal government has to cover it, It's forcing people to be a customer of a type of business and then erasing all the risk. Like, it's crazy. Because, like, all of these for-profit insurance companies get subsidized and their risk gets covered through a bunch of different mechanisms. Like, it's so inefficient because of the sheer number of institutions and organizations that are baked in to draw profit out of the thing. Like, just listen to Nixon talk to Kaiser Permanente. This is the dream. We're going to create more and more BS, more and more credentials so that people... Like, the time isn't spent on the patient. The time is spent on the credentials. The time is spent on the insurance company. The time is wasted. I mean, like, part of the reason they create this credential is so that so many people can't do it. It's not about you can do it. It's about you can't do it, so that there's constant supply and demand imbalance. So then again, they get to exploit that. They're creating supply and demand imbalances by developing credentials so that you don't get health care. And they can charge more for it, and it'll seem logical and justified. But it's not. Further, the mental health crisis in the United States is caused by our detrimental society, which is ultimately the product of terrible mismanagement and bad government for decades. Is there anything up there? Can you hear that? I bet you can. Nope. It's hollow. So there's nothing in here. What the hell is going on with you? I mean, I say that as a grand you. I'm not saying that you personally aren't understanding the terrible travesty that's going on not only in the United States, but globally. And the fact is, if we can fix what's going on in the United States, we can fix what's going on globally. But the goal is now to create the United States as some, like, exclusive, just an exclusive place. They're going to get rid of anyone that's undesirable, that they can get rid of, and then they are going to incarcerate and impoverish anyone that they can't get rid of. Or just wrongful death them, or suspicious death them, or accidental death them, or suicide them. You need to look into some of these coroners, too. Jeez. Just Monroe. Oh, my gosh. And Macomb. And then, oh, gosh. That's for another time. All right, I'll see you. Not the ones that I'm mentioning. These are not the current medical examiners and coroners. These are past, not that far past, but they're bad. They're bad. I don't know. I want to sayonara. I like this. Yeah, we're just going to do this one.